I know this is a new look. Had a concept come into my mind. Just came from the temple. And this isn't necessary to do with the temple, but it's just how my mind kind of works. So I thought I'd jump on here. Before I get into what I want to talk about today, thank you for those cool comments that I did with one of my sons, the video on UFOs, aliens, angels of light. I always feel like after reading comments and stuff, I need to like do a little wrap up video. So there were a few comments that said, well, Christ, the angel Moroni, Moses, these heavenly messengers that came, they are from the earth. So therefore they're not aliens. And this is where I would beg to differ. Yes, they all lived in mortality on earth, no question about that. But as Christ was resurrected, the last element of the atonement was his ascension into heaven. That's leaving the earth. So you leave and then you come back. Now you're an extraterrestrial as you come back because you're living somewhere else. You're alive somewhere else and then you come back. Now, the only other way you could argue it, in my opinion, is say that they're still on earth, just in a different dimension. But I really don't think that's the case. And here's another thing I've thought of, is that every single person that has been resurrected, since Christ was the first fruits, he was the first to be resurrected. There have been many resurrected immediately after that, we know that. But then subsequent resurrections. Moroni is a really good example of that, living 400 plus years after the Savior was here, after he was resurrected. And then he's, as a resurrected being, he visits the prophet Joseph. So I would say that every resurrected person to this point has been righteous. Otherwise, you got to wait. And so therefore, they ascended to the Father, in addition to Christ ascending to the Father. This is just my opinion. But then if they come back to earth on assignment, they're extraterrestrials. So we have this imitation of angels of light and miracles and all this stuff that would be satanic in nature. And I think there was a pretty good consensus that some of these, aliens, UFOs, whatever, could be in that category. And then we have the examples of extraterrestrials coming to Earth that are righteous. They're here on the assignment from God for a specific purpose, to be here. So always being obedient to the Father, which Christ set that example. And so you're going to have the imitation. There's always an imitation. The one thing I thought of in the temple is how ritualistic it is and what a ritual it is. And it freaks some people out because we know on the opposite end, there's evil rituals. And I know people that I love and trust that have had that experience in their life as a young person being subjected to that. And it would make sense that if God set up his organization and his children to receive a covenant and then be reminded of that covenant through ritual, then wouldn't Satan want to imitate that? There's a lot of criticism of the church by other Christians that say, your weird rituals in the temple and this and that. And from now on, I'm going to point to it like, yeah, well, Satan has his rituals, God has his, because Satan would always try to imitate God. So the very fact that we know that they're satanic rituals, that's evidence. That's evidence that God would have rituals. And then, of course, we have the whole Old Testament of these sacred rituals that pointed towards Christ. So that's just kind of a thought that way. I mean, I don't want to, keep talking about it, but this is current news, guys. This isn't, it was just so funny. Some of the comments, why are you bringing this stuff up? This doesn't have anything to do with our salvation or anything like that. Well, I don't always cover everything that has to do with your eternal salvation on this channel. I bring up topics that are of interest and usually current. But most of your comments were really good, really interesting, and many of you have had unexplainable experiences. And I think typically we have to go by what our spirit feels when or if we have some of these experiences. And that's the telling sign, The other thing that I just wanted to tie into this were the temptations of Christ, and how that's really something that we ought to be focused on, are those temptations and how to overcome them. And some comments that were made, I really encourage you to read the comments. I could probably do better by highlighting some of the comments and reading them and that, but it's just not my style. But trust me, I read them, and they're so insightful. They're so good. But somebody really went into a little bit of detail on each one of those temptations and how they influence us, and I thought it was really good, because Christ is the perfect example. Some person went or said something like, well, those temptations were stupid because, Christ is going to overcome any temptation, so it's just a waste of time. Interesting. I suspect that Christ had to feel those temptations so that he could understand how he's redeeming us. It's hard to redeem somebody if you don't understand what they're going through. And so I'm sure those weren't stupid. Otherwise, you could say, well, we know he's going to overcome the cross. He's going to conquer death and victory, so the cross is kind of stupid. We wouldn't say that. He suffered, he bled and died. So, and experienced the pain of it. I would feel that the temptations were equally as felt, and maybe not equally as important in as far as our redemption, but perhaps, and it was part of the process. It was part of the suffering. In Mosiah 18, verse 2, like the last half of verse 2, it says the power of Christ, and I interpret that as his Father, being God the Father, gave him the power. So the power of Christ, the suffering, it immediately goes to the suffering. The power of Christ, the suffering, his death, his resurrection, and his ascension into heaven. The 5 elements of the atonement, in my opinion. And so the suffering is right after his birth, coming in power is suffering. Part of the suffering of Christ were those temptations, for sure. But I mentioned this before. I've had all these from different angles, people mentioning fasting. Some in a religious sense, and some just in a health. Just it's a healthy thing for our bodies, of fasting. And then I think fasting, and we always think of Christ fasting and being in a weakened state, which he was, obviously, and then, turn these stones into bread, and tempting him with the physical appetite. But think of the fasting as also providing him the strength to overcome the temptations. That's what really hit me as we were contemplating all this recently. Now, I've spent almost 10 minutes talking about that other video. I go negative once in a while. Really? I think one of the issues we have in the church is we are, and I've talked about this before, but I'm going to add a few more scriptures and I add a little more insight. But we are stuck in callings. We are stuck in callings. We are stuck in assignments, and we are stuck in waiting to hear what the prophet tells us what to do or what not to do. And I think it is stuck. I think it's stopping our progression as a church and as approaching Zion. As we approach Zion, I want to share a couple of scriptures that I think help us get us over the hump, if you will, in getting to that Zion state, which personally, I think that Zion can be achieved here and right now. And I think the blessing of the temple, particularly if you live in the west of the United States and particularly in Utah, what do we have? 20 some odd options right now, even with some construction and a few temples just on the verge of being dedicated. We're still, I think, over 20 temples that are active you can go to. That's incredible. One little state in the West, it's not little, but you know, a medium-sized state in the West. And certainly these temples are built. I had the coolest thing. So I was waiting, I went with my daughter visiting from Texas. Our little granddaughter, Jane, is with us that we've talked about so many times, and she's doing pretty well. Not without her issues. She's on a kind of a heavy duty steroid in addition to taking chemo through pill form right now while she's on a little trip with her family here. It's just been a joy. But Caitlin and I went, and Grandma Sue watched the kids. You don't call it babysitting if it's family, right? Unless you're a dad or a grandpa, and it's babysitting. It's called survival. It's called, man, I hope there's something good on TV. and then you come home and your wife or your daughters, and they've got them engaged in some very meaningful, cool thing that they're learning and progressing. And, I don't want to downgrade a male. That's done all through the media, downgrading, the masculinity and the male. But nurturing isn't our strength as a whole. Let's just say that. And I don't know, I got off on something. So I'm waiting. My daughter had to get some clothes and do some things. And so I was waiting in the chapel room. The lady goes, "Oh, we got a full session. Do you have an appointment?" And super nice. And I said, "Yeah, we do." I said, "But if we have to wait till the next session, because anyway, if we have to, that's fine. It's half hour. You can meditate, read a few scriptures, and next thing you know, it's time." This is what's happened when you get older. A half hour is like, When I was younger, I was like, a half hour? I don't have time to wait a half hour. There's a time and a season for everything. And even, with my attention deficit issues, self-diagnosed, I find that the older I get, the less stress I am about waiting here and there a little bit. And I was really, really bad about that kind of thing. And I'm not as bad as I used to be. Anyway, I'm waiting for my daughter. And the lady comes to me and she goes, the temple worker, and I'm just sitting on this bench waiting for my daughter to go sit down in a pew, if you will. And it's getting close. It's probably 5-10 minutes before they're going to have us go into the session. And she comes up to me and goes, "Won't it be wonderful in the millennium? During the millennium, we won't have to make an appointment for the temple." And I said, why would you say that? And to me, and not questioning it. And she goes, I don't know, I just felt like it. I said, yes, I totally believe that. And I said, and 24/7. And I said, and we'll all have the energy to do it. And she just went, yes. We just had this second coming millennial conversation just in whisper right there. It was really a cool experience. In fact, I got to tell Sue about that. I forgot. Anyway, so great day in the temple. More insights, cool things. I wonder, have you guys noticed the really change? I mean, it's pretty dramatic change in the order of the creation as depicted in the temple, and the different elements of the creation, the different days, things that happen on certain, first day, second day, third day. Pretty cool. Okay, now, the issue that we have, in my opinion, that keeps us from approaching Zion or getting to Zion or entering into the pearly gates of Zion is this idea of callings, assignments, and following, waiting for the prophet to tell us what to do and what not to do. Now, I'm gonna go to a couple of scriptures, and then we're gonna expand this. Let's go to section 58. This just hits it right between the eyes, right off the bat. Sometimes you save the best for the last. I'm just gonna do the okay. So section 58. This is in Jackson County, Missouri, of all places. Okay. Verse 26. So section 58, verse 26. For behold, it is not meet that I should command in all things. For he that is compelled, and I would add a she, in all things the same is a slothful and not a wise servant. Wherefore he or she receiveth no reward. Verily I say, men, and I'll add, and women, should be anxiously engaged in a good cause, and do many things of their own free will, and bring to pass much righteousness. For the power is in them, wherein they are agents unto themselves. And inasmuch as men and women do good, they shall in no wise lose their reward. The reward being Zion, in my opinion. The reward being Zion. The reward being Zion. And so examine all those things. Now, there's a great cross-reference to this that my daughter pointed out, the one here visiting from Texas. And this is really, really good. So one of the lesser known sections of the Doctrine and Covenants where Joseph and others are in Liberty Jail. The last verse in section 123, verse 17. Therefore, dearly beloved brethren, so this is section 123, verse 17. Therefore, dearly beloved brethren, let us cheerfully do all things that lie in our power. Now, I'm going to pause there and go back to the one we read. For the power is in them, wherein they are agents unto themselves. We're given power to do so many things without a calling. And this is where I think we've gotten off a path here, and I'll cover that in a second. So I'll start that verse again. Therefore, dearly beloved brethren, let us cheerfully do all things that lie in our power. And from the previous, in section 58, it says we have the power within us. And then may we stand still with the utmost assurance to see the salvation of God and for his arm to be revealed. His arm revealed is in the New Jerusalem, right? It's in Zion. So for the power is in them, wherein they are agents unto themselves. I love that. Okay, now, I just let me explain before people freak out here. I'm not saying that this has to do with the organization of the church and the policies and procedures and how things are done. We have a prophet and a president and counselors and a quorum of 12 that they have the keys to do that. But here's where I think we make the big mistake, in that we wait for them to tell us what to do and what not to do, where we should be anxiously engaged on our own free will and choice in a good cause, our own free will doing it. Okay? So now let's go to section 121. And this, everyone knows this is the one of the most powerful sections of most powerful revelations of all Scripture, in my opinion, is section 121. Of course, in Liberty Jail. And towards the end of that, in verse 34, behold, there are many called, but few are chosen. Now let's just think about that for a minute. Many called, but few are chosen. Many called, but few are chosen. Now, think of how we live our existence in the church as with callings. Well, I got called to do this. I got called to do that. Oh, what's your calling? We focus everything on the call, the calling. I got called to serve a mission. I'm called. I have a calling. I just got released from my calling. That is what drives us. And that's where our focus is. Not everybody. Now, look, I know there's so many, you guys, especially in this audience, you do so many things of your own free will and choice, and you're good souls. I'm talking kind of the mentality, the umbrella mentality of members of the church. And I think this is a fairly new phenomenon. I've talked about this. It's like, okay, here's a for instance. Many people said, wow, look how inspired the prophet was to have the Come Follow Me program come forth before COVID hit. That way we could study at home. Well, really? Seriously? Seriously? That wasn't something that was in here already, to not just do it like in Sunday school or whatever, and just, you go to church and that's when you do it. But to actually open up the scriptures at home, really? Caitlin, my daughter that's visiting from Texas, she read a study that somebody did where if you don't read scriptures at all, and have nothing like that in your life, there's issues of depression, anxiety, and just all kinds of stuff. If you read it 2 or 3 times a week, scriptures, and not just like read a scripture, but have some personal study time, has very little effect. 2 to 3 days. But 4 and 5 days a week has huge benefits for dealing with anxiety, depression, a lot of mental illness issues. It's a study. I don't have the source or anything, but I thought it was really compelling. So here we are with the Come Follow Me program, and we go, gosh, it's a good thing the prophet thought of that and revealed it to us. To have a program that would have us study the scriptures during the week. I'm just like, look, there's a time and a season. I get it. When you're a young, say you've got a job and you're going to school and raising a family. Okay, many of us have been there, and you remember that. If you had a moment to read a little bit in scripture and ponder and pray, the Lord qualified your effort. I guarantee it. If you went to the temple once a month or once every other month, the Lord qualified your effort. If you went, you know, 3 or 4 times in a year during a certain period of time of your life, and I'm talking people that had temples close to them, probably the Lord qualified your effort when you're in a particular situation. So don't think this is a blanket stuff. Man, I wish people would not pin me down like that, because I speak in very broad general terms, like the church, right? The members of the church as a whole. And it's just my observation from personal experience. Now, I've had a lot of callings, and some of them heavy duty, you know, mission president, stake president, bishop a couple of times, both a family ward and a YSA ward. These are callings. Callings mean zero. They really don't do anything for your salvation. They can, you can experience some things if you choose. If you choose to be chosen. And this is where we're going to get. We're going to graduate from a calling, because as we read these subsequent verses, the calling doesn't guarantee anything. The calling doesn't put you in a certain level after this life. It has nothing to do with it. The choosing is everything. The being chosen and choosing to be chosen. And we'll talk about that in just a second. This is where we have to transition from. And personally, my personal opinion, I think we've gone backwards as a church in the last few years in this aspect. It's like, well, I wonder what they're going to tell us to do in conference this year. You know, well, I wonder, you know, if I ought to be thinking about the second coming and preparing for that. I don't know. I wonder if I ought to be watching for the signs. I don't know. I haven't heard that from the prophet recently, so I don't think I should do that. Well, maybe if you just read your scriptures, you would see that that's what we're supposed to do. Okay? And there's a myriad of other things, right? Myriad. Waiting to be called, waiting to be assigned. There's no reward. There's no reward. What does that say in section 58? Let's go back to that really quick, section 58, because it's, I think it's just so important. It says, for the power is in them, wherein they are agents unto themselves, and inasmuch as men do good, they shall in no wise lose their reward. But that's if they do things on their own. If you don't, okay. So let's finish these verses here in section 121. So I'm in verse 34 again. Behold, there are many called, so many people have callings, but few are chosen. Ooh, what's the separation? Let's be more focused on chosen. Okay, and why are they not chosen? Oh, verse 35, just a dagger right here. Listen to this. Because their hearts are set so much upon the things of this world. And this is where we get into the temptations of Christ, right? And aspire to the honors of men. You know, it's better, obedience is better than sacrifice. That is one of the greatest stories in Old Testament. And it might take me a second to find that, but we have I think it's Samuel, isn't it? And Samuel tells Saul, here we go. Gosh, I found it. Okay. So Samuel, who Hannah's son, who's raised by Eli. Eli's not the greatest example, but he does a good enough job that Samuel is a great prophet, and he's the prophet at the time of Saul being the king, the unifying king of Israel, right? So Samuel tells Saul to just wipe out. Is it the who is it? Yeah, the Amalekites. Okay, the Amalekites. And, lay waste. Well, what they do is they keep some of the stuff. And then they use some of it for burnt offerings and all this kind of stuff. And Saul's like, you guys don't get it. You need to be obedient. And obedience is better than using all this stuff from the Amalekites to offer up sacrifice and keeping some of their stuff. And then he says this interesting thing. And Saul said to Samuel, so Saul's like, I screwed up. I have sinned. This is 1 Samuel chapter 15, verse 24. And Saul said unto Samuel, I have sinned, for I have transgressed the commandments of the Lord and thy words, because I feared the people and obeyed their voice. Wow. And what does this say? The reason why people aren't chosen, and guess what happened to Saul? He lost his kingship. That's when Samuel said, you're done. You're no longer going to be the king. I'll find a new king. And that's when David came. But because their hearts are set so much upon the things of the world and they aspire to the honors of men, that's just exactly what happened to Saul. And Samuel pointed it out. Saul realized he was a sinner and his life went downhill. Sue and I actually, is it Bet Shean? I think it's Bet Shean. Can't remember. But went to the place in the Galilee region, but definitely, I should have worn my cool t-shirt I got from the Israel guys. It says West Bank, and then it's crossed out, and it says Samaria, Judea. But this is in Samaria region, maybe Galilee, but definitely what the world would call West Bank. But it's where Saul was killed. So this all just comes right home. It's a beautiful excavated and restored Roman city now. It's one of the best preserved Roman cities in all of archaeology is there in Israel, of all places. It's amazing. But okay. Because their hearts are set so much on things of the world, and they aspire to the honors of men, and they do not learn this one lesson, that the rights of the priesthood are inseparably connected with the powers of heaven, and that the powers of heaven cannot be controlled nor handled only upon the principles of righteousness. And I would just add individual righteousness. Individual righteousness. This is how you choose to be chosen, right? This is how we choose to be chosen. Let's go to section 105 real quick. This is section 105. Well, okay, and first I'm going to go to verse 5. And Zion cannot be built up unless it is on the principles of the law of the celestial kingdom. Otherwise, I cannot receive her unto myself. These are the principles of righteousness as well, right? And my people must needs be chastened until they learn obedience. Obedience is better than sacrifice. If it must needs be by the things which they suffer. Ooh, big rainstorm again. Okay, now here's the other part I want to see. Because this all has to do with Zion. Everything we just read and it says Zion, Zion, Zion. Okay, so this is section 105 again, and then I'm gonna read in verse 33 on down. Okay, so section 105 now verse 33. Verily I say unto you, it is expedient in me that the first elders of my church should receive their endowment from on high in mine house, which I have commanded to be built unto my name in the land of Kirtland. and let those commandments which I have given concerning Zion and her law be executed, fulfilled after her redemption. Now listen to this. This is why I think Zion is obtainable right now. Verse 35, this is key. There has been a day of calling. Guys, we got to get over this. It's in the past. But the time has come for a day of choosing. And let those be chosen that are worthy or righteous, okay? Or wanting to be part of the celestial law. This is why President Oaks said, you know, most of what we talk about is the highest degree, the celestial kingdom, the celestial law. We don't dwell on a lot about the other kingdoms of glory. Wow, it's really coming down out there. This is awesome. Got dark. Verse 35 in section 105, this is so key. There has been a day of calling, so many are called. Let's be done with that. But the time has come for a day of choosing, and let those be chosen that are worthy. Individual righteousness. Individuals deciding for themselves to do something. Now, just on a personal note, this YouTube channel for me has been one of the most fulfilling, other than marriage and fatherhood, callings, business stuff. There's some great and wonderful things about it. No doubt. But getting married, having children, right behind that, I put this YouTube channel. For me. And it's because it wasn't an assignment, it wasn't a calling, it was just something I felt that I should do. Now, I could expand on that, but I don't feel it's appropriate to do that. But I know I say things sometimes that bother people. I know that. I know I say things that I had even some comment on the last video said, why, or inferring that I'm trying to lead people astray from the church or from the gospel or something. I'm like, what have I done to do that? Anyway, but I get it. I know I can rub people the wrong way, and I know that. But hopefully people understand that I have a love of the gospel of Jesus Christ restored through the prophet Joseph. I sustain the prophet today, President Nelson, and sustain and always have. I love the temple. I love Israel. I love everything about what's going to take place there, what took place there, and what's taking place there now. I have a passion of that, and dang, there's just so much that's in here. And in this channel, I get a chance to express it. I get a chance to, of my own free will, share my testimony. I'm not called to do it. Nobody called me to do it. That is my leader, my gosh, I got to be careful how I say this. It's not an assignment from a local leader, okay, or a man, let's say, a human, but that's why it's so rewarding. That's why it's not a reward in the sense of the world, but just like, gosh, I'm actually doing something that nobody assigned me to do. It's very meaningful. I know I didn't express that very well. Let's get back to section 121. Because their hearts are set, this is why they're not chosen. Their hearts are set so much upon the things of this world and aspire to the honors of men, and they do not learn this one lesson, that the rights of the priesthood are inseparably connected with the powers of heaven, and that the powers of heaven cannot be controlled nor handled only upon the principles of righteousness. That they may be conferred upon us is true. You can get called, you can have a calling, you can be set apart for that calling. That's what that is, conferred is true. But when we undertake to cover our sins or to gratify our pride, and I think we all fall victim of this. It's intoxicating to have someone say, oh, what a wonderful talk that was. Oh, we just love your leadership. Oh, we this, oh, that. Very intoxicating and very evil. Our pride, our vain ambitions, or to exercise control or dominion or compulsion upon the souls of the children of men in any degree of unrighteousness. Behold, the heavens withdraw themselves, the Spirit of the Lord is grieved, and when it is withdrawn, amen to the priesthood or the authority of that man. And I would just add, their chosenness, being chosen, is gone. It's gone. So here's what I worry that as a church, where we fall into sometimes, is we sit around and wait for a calling, or we wait for an assignment, or we wait to hear from the prophet as to what to do or what not to do. I think for most of what our lives are, it's that we have the power within ourselves to do so much, and not be compelled. I've said this before, but conference should merely be a confirmation of what you're doing, studying, reading. It should be a confirmation, not a, wow, I never thought of that. I guess I probably ought to do that kind of thing. That's my opinion. Not that we can't get insights and all that, so don't think I'm dismissing everything about it. And also, just to reiterate, I'm not talking about the government aspect of the church. I say the phrase a lot, not my pig, not my farm. It's not my pig, not my farm concerning, the schedule on Sunday. I would prefer having sacrament meeting and go home. But that's not my call, right? It's not my deal. I'd really like a temple just a little bit closer to me, like maybe a 5-minute drive. So I know a perfect spot that they could build a temple. Not my pig, not my farm. It's not my concern. I don't worry about that. Policies concerning disciplinary action, all that, you could just go on and on and on and on. It's not my deal. It's not my deal. But when it comes to my a relationship with Christ, with God the Father and His Son Jesus Christ, when it comes to relationship, it's all on me. It's all on me. It's all on me. Now, there's other things I could say, but I think I've pushed it enough right now. And so I'll probably end it here real quick, but I hope that you understand I'm talking in general terms. I'm not pointing my finger at you. In fact, a lot of criticism that I bring up, I'm pointing it right here. It's the observation that I've gone through. And as I would say, matured in the gospel, I've realized that callings used to be a big deal. I'll be honest, callings used to be a big deal. Callings are zero, choosing to be chosen. Now, it is interesting that there's a series that we happen to have a pretty good connection with called The Chosen. Wow. And it's obviously about Christ being chosen. He's the Son of God. Chosen in the premortal life, right? We learn all about that. God chose him to fulfill a plan. They both presented plans. And Christ was chosen. The other chosen were the apostles in this series. And certain disciples chosen because they chose to be chosen. We choose to be chosen. We choose to establish Zion. Zion is not going to be established, in my opinion, by waiting around as a people to see and send Moses up to the mountain and say, okay, come down and tell us what to do. Those children of Israel had issues. Moses, tell us what to do. We're not going up there. You go up there. And as long as we have that attitude, I think it's going to get a little more dicey as a church. I'm talking about the church. It's going to get dicey. So here's my hope. Here's my hope that we take it upon ourselves to choose to be chosen, and that's a chosen relationship. It's not a procedure. It's not an organization. It's a relationship, and I love that. And when we choose that relationship, things start falling into place. We still have issues. We're still in mortality. We still have aches and pains and bills to pay and all those things. But it's all about relationship. God bless. Thanks for watching. Thanks for supporting the channel. Thanks for doing all that you do. Comments, recommending other videos and other things. It's all good. It's all good. So God bless. We'll talk to you soon.